Welcome to the very first episode of the Juan Palomino Breakthrough Podcast.
Come on.
I'm Jenna, and I am here with my husband, Juan.
Hello, everybody.
This podcast is all about helping you break free from fear, self-doubt, and unhealthy patterns so you can live and lead with confidence and purpose. Juan has spent years coaching individuals and teams to step into the best version of themselves, and I couldn't be more excited about what's ahead. Babe,
Yep.
are you ready to dive in?
I'm excited.
All right.
We're going to break through.
Okay, so tell us why this podcast was created.
Yeah. Again, so excited to be here. This is a long time coming, and here we are.
Yeah.
This podcast, if you're listening, number one, thank you so much for tuning in. Jen and I, my wife and I, are so grateful that you guys are here with us on this amazing journey, and this is going to help us also break through. But this podcast is really because so many people that we've talked to, that I've talked to, over the past decade, even a little longer, people just feel stuck. Whether it's in obviously their personal lives, they feel stuck in their relationships, they feel stuck in their leadership, and underneath all of that feeling stuck, what we found is that there's these primal questions that have been imprinted on us without knowing since we were kids. And so the objective is to help you see yourself the way God intended you to see yourself, and to break through and not allow these, we'll call them primal questions that we try to, answer or get answered in different things or different places or in people. And when we don't get them answered, we get stuck. And so that's the objective of this podcast. And we're going to have a lot of fun and have some guests and all that other stuff, but I'll let you lead. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited.
Well, yeah, I think those of us that know you know that you're natural leaders. So take a seat back.
Okay, I'll let you lead.
Okay, so I know, and we can hear that this work is deeply personal to you. So can you share with us a little bit about your journey, what led you to coaching, leadership, and ultimately launching this podcast?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it already. It's just feeling stuck. And here's what I mean by that. I remember going in through my teens and then my young adult years and having success by the grace of God, having success in areas of my life, whether it was in my personal life, in a relationship, or obviously in the world. Did many things, from sales to building teams, leading teams, management, from the fitness industry to real estate to, ministry, obviously, and, working in the church world and church planting. I mean, so many things, but I always would run into a wall, and then I would feel stuck. And there were certain things that, I would regress to, and I would find myself either isolating or I find myself too much in my head, overthinking things. And so I went on a journey. That's what I want to tell you, is that I went on a journey of self-discovery, a journey of understanding who I really am and what, who God created me to be. And there was a lot of great discovering and uncovering and finding out, like I mentioned a little while ago, is what were the things that were holding me back? What were the things that happened to me that, believe it or not, were still affecting me in my present life at that time, that I thought, oh, that thing happened in the past, why would it impact me today? But it did, and it was, and believe it or not, it still does today. But I have obviously, through the journey of self-discovery and growing and finding out what my primal question is, I have a better grasp on it, and I don't allow it to trip me up as much, and I'm able to not get stuck but break through.
Yeah, so one of my favorite questions that people ask us, and this is how we met, because people that know us now know us as the pastor and his wife, right? And a lot of times we're in circles where it's just Christians, church people. And so Can you talk a little bit about that and your faith journey and what that looks like?
Oh my gosh. We're going to make this short. We'll give you a quick synopsis of it. Well, my tendency, and maybe you'll relate to this, is to do what you've always done. And what I mean by that is what has worked, I'll continue doing that because it's worked, whether it's in a relationship, a new job, a new step of faith in a new business, whatever that is. And so I had these gifts and talents that worked, for me. And I always found myself in a position of, let's call it quote unquote success in certain areas. So example, I would be successful in my job or my new business venture, but then I would fail in my relationships at home, or I would not feel like I was succeeding in my relationships with my kids. And so I was like, man, I want to win in all areas of my life. Why is it that I can't really succeed in all areas? I can only succeed in some areas. And
here's one of our children.
And so that led me to this journey of discovery of saying, you know what? Okay, I've tried it my way. Let me figure this thing out with a higher power. And that higher power is Jesus Christ. And so I went on this beautiful spiritual journey, which was, I'll confess, it wasn't my foundation in the past. It was a part of it, but it wasn't, it wasn't really, number one, my identity. It wasn't, my foundation. And so everything I would build on it would just crumble. Again, I would have some wins and some successes in certain areas, but it really, my life would fall apart if that one thing that I was being successful in then would fall apart, or I would fail and then everything would fall apart. Yeah. If that answers that a little bit.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So where was your breakthrough in there?
Yeah. So my breakthrough was when I figured out that my primal question was, but more importantly, is my identity in Christ Jesus. Mm-hmm. My identity in, not in what I think I need to be or who I need to be for people to like me, to want me, to need me, to feel secure, to feel wanted, to feel like I am successful, or do I have a purpose in my life? None of those things. I am secure in Christ, whether all those things are happening or not. So I give credit 100% to discovering that my identity rooted in Christ, my success will come from there.
Yeah. So let's bring it back around. So I brought up, I think the people want to know, right? Because I said, we're in church groups and people always ask us where we met.
Uh-huh. So that's what you should just ask me directly.
Tell them where we met.
So we met at a bar and on New Year's Eve in 2010, closing that chapter into 2011. Mm-hmm. And then we met at a bar. Yeah. It wasn't at a youth group event. It wasn't at church. I was searching. Mm-hmm. Maybe just for a one night stand, but I was trying to get my life together. And I was out for one hoorah, one more. And I was like, okay, I'm going to commit my life to Christ. You make these decisions, when New Year's Eve happens and New Year's Day, you're like, okay, I'm going to, begin to start doing things differently. But God had a different plan. I met you that evening, that night. And, long story short, 13 months later, we got married. Yeah. Yeah. And here we are. Yeah. 14 years later.
Okay, we'll save that long story for another day. Tell us more about, you explained it a little bit, but tell us more about your leadership experience and what that looked like. What's that look like throughout your life?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that leaders are not born. You can actually become a leader. Now there are some qualities, some character traits that obviously God gives us that we're born with. The Bible calls it gifts and talents. And those are strengths. But there's also areas where you can begin to grow in. And so I learned at a very young age that, I had some gifts and I used them. I couldn't call them gifts because I didn't know what it was, but I was just like, oh, when I do this or say that, or, when I'm in this place where I feel like I am, wow, like I'm seeing a response, a reaction, I could use that, and my leadership experience, when I finally defined what leadership was, is when I actually wanted to become like somebody, and I actually got mentored by that person, and that person began to pour into me. This is where like the coaching piece comes in and leadership, and that person began to speak life into me and affirm or confirm those gifts for me. And from there, also look at what my strengths and weaknesses were and help me along the way. And so when I learned leadership, I was like, this is phenomenal. I want to learn more about this. And then once you have good leadership, you could also detect when you have bad leadership. One of my favorite authors, John Maxwell, talks about, the 5 levels of leadership. And, when you're a level 1, level 2 leader, you will not attract level 5 leaders, level 4 leaders. They just, right? Then he says, eagles flock around with eagles. They don't hang around with chickens, and eagles don't hang around, plucking the ground like chickens do. They're up in the sky flying. And so I had to look up. Where I had to break through this fear of even taking out someone to lunch that I was inspired by, and begin to pick their brain and ask the questions. If I saw that that person had what I wanted, then it was an invitation to say, you know what, I'd like to have a conversation about how did you get to where you are at today, to where you're at today. And I know we can see videos and even listen to podcasts on stuff, but there's nothing like having a one-on-one conversation with someone, their undivided attention, and ask intimate questions versus just hearing a conversation. It starts there, but leadership is something that, I've been around some phenomenal level 5 leaders, in the church world as well as in the business world, and it's attractive. And I hope that that's something that, at the end of my life, that people could say, hey, I'm grateful that I tuned into this podcast, and listened to Juan and Jenna, because, I gleaned some things from them and I learned, and my leadership, had a breakthrough when, I tuned into them.
Yeah, so you talked about how you surrounded yourself with leaders and how you found mentors. So how did you start finding people to lead? How did you go into that?
What's interesting is when you lead yourself well, do I call you babe, Jenna?
Sure.
Honey? When you lead yourself well, you look back and people begin to follow. There's this saying, how do you know you're a leader? Well, look behind you. And if people are following you, then you're a leader. The other thing I found was at a very young age, people would ask me, hey, Juan, like, what are you doing? Or, what are you into? Or what's going on? And people were naturally would gravitate towards me. And I didn't know what that was. And later on, I was like, oh, I guess that's leadership, because people want to follow me. And I took that as I felt the responsibility of it, the weight of the responsibility of it. And I was like, I could use this for good or I could use it for bad. Now, obviously growing up, I use it for bad too, when I was growing up and didn't have the maturity to come along with it. But now, in my mid 40s, I understand the gravity and the responsibility of even this podcast. People tuning in, listening, and what we share hopefully inspires, helps them, to better their leadership and to have breakthroughs, in their personal lives, but also in their families and in their areas of business, right, and in ministry as well.
Right. And I was going to bring up the part also of being the leader of the household, right? So I remember when we first got together, I was also always used to being a leader. And so when we first got together, we had a little bit of a clash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so we both tried to lead together and it didn't work. And so For me, I had to learn to take a step back and to trust you as a leader. But
well, you said the word though, trust,
right,
which was earned.
yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
You had to trust me, and so I had to lead well.
Right.
Right. I remember looking at you and saying, honey, you got to let me lead.
Oh man. Yeah.
Remember that conversation? You got to let me lead. Just trust me on it. And I remember telling you this, I'm not going to be perfect, but I love you. And my goal is not to hurt you or not to put you in a position, where you're going to regret this. And so far, I don't know. Have I done all right? It's 14 years, but what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think also too, it was communicating that, right? And not just
assuming,
clashing and assuming and and just taking a step back and but also it was what attracted me to you of having a man to come and take that responsibility off me and leading me instead of me taking it upon myself and leading. But I would also say that there are parts where I take leadership, but
yeah, and I know where to step back as well.
Right.
That's the beautiful dance of, which we look forward to having more conversations in this podcast about is how do you do this? Let's call it dance, where you can trust me in this specific area or there's times where I am tired, right? And I've led, for 2-3 days straight at work and home and all these areas, or let's just say outside in the business world, and I could come home and I just go, you're leading, honey. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And then there's days where, you're leading in ministry and doing other stuff. And I'm like, great, I get to support you and not, my ego doesn't get in the way to say, oh, I need to be the one leading, or, what are people going to think about me? And again, that goes back to those primal questions that we're going to tackle during this, podcast. Where does that, am I loved? Am I secure? Am I safe? Am I, good enough? Do I have purpose in my life? Am I wanted? Am I needed? Like why, where's my brain going with this?
Right.
By allowing you to lead. Right. When it's okay.
And knowing my primal question, which is, am I successful? And so for us both knowing that question and me asking that, is that me trying to be successful? Right.
Yeah.
And leadership is very, it's important for us to both know that. So I think that's a great spot to just kind of end it. And that was a lot of meat.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say, if anything, that we talked about today resonated with you, please just know that, you can go to my website, juanpalominocoaching.com, on Instagram. There's a lot more information there. And, just DM me, primal, PRIMAL. Or you can go to juanpalominocoaching.com on my website, and you can take the assessment there and begin to, it's a short little quiz you take. You just answer some questions, and then you'll know what your primal question is. And then I'll reach out to you, and we can just set up a free 30-minute, just conversation, amongst us to begin to help you discover more, how that question has been impacting you negatively or positively, and how you can break through. So when that primal question of yours begins to affect you negatively or begin to, get you stuck, you can see it coming and go, oh, here, I have the tools now so that I can be successful and have a breakthrough.
Yeah. We have some incredible episodes lined up where Juan will be sharing insights, real life coaching moments, and conversations with some amazing guests. We'll be deep diving into topics like overcoming fear, breaking through limiting beliefs, and stepping into leadership with clarity and confidence. We'll also be sharing practical tools that you can apply right away, whether you're a leader, entrepreneur, or someone looking to grow. This podcast is for you.
Come on.
So if you got value from today's episode, make sure to subscribe.
Yes.
Share it with a friend and follow Juan on Instagram for some more insights. We've got a lot of good stuff on there. And then don't miss our next episode where we will be diving into the number one question holding you back from breakthrough. You won't want to miss it.
It's going to be fun. Don't miss it. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And don't forget, breakthrough is coming right around the corner.